The task of a leader is to bring his society from where it is to where it has never been. In order to do that, you need vision and courage. You need to be able to imagine what doesn't yet exist, a better future for your people. And then you have to have the courage to withstand the attacks from those that have to alter their attitudes.
President Trump says he's seen evidence that COVID-19 came from a laboratory in China.
U.S. intelligence officials tell CNN they are investigating another possible source, that it possibly started in a Wuhan lab. Chinese officials pushing back against that claim on Thursday, stressing that, quote, this is a scientific issue that should be studied by scientists and medical experts. Yet, it is the same spokesperson who last month floated a controversial theory, tweeting that it might be the U.S. Army who brought the epidemic to Wuhan.
China tried to say at one point, maybe they stopped now, that it was caused by American soldiers. It comes from China.
As hundreds of millions traveled leading up to the Lunar New Year holiday, mass gatherings at airports and railway stations, the Wuhan Health Commission maintained that the outbreak was controllable and preventable and that this was not contagious. It was not until January 20th did leading health officials acknowledge publicly cases of human-to-human transmission. Wuhan ophthalmologist Dr. Li Wenliang was reprimanded in early January by Wuhan police. They accused the 34-year-old of spreading rumors after he had messaged friends, warning them of a SARS-like illness going around. He died of coronavirus in early February.
In the United States, President Trump says he's seen evidence that coronavirus originated in a Chinese laboratory, but he provided no details. The US's National Intelligence Director's Office says COVID-19 was not man-made or genetically modified. China has rejected what President Trump asserts.
The American President Donald Trump says he's seen evidence that suggests coronavirus originated in a Chinese laboratory. He provided no details, though. His own intelligence agencies have said they're still investigating how the virus began, but have determined COVID-19 was not man-made or genetically modified. David Willis reports.
The P4 pathogen lab at Wuhan's Institute of Virology. Did the deadly coronavirus emanate from here? China strenuously denies such suggestions. The President of the United States believes otherwise. Mr. Trump says he's seen evidence linking the virus to the lab, although he wouldn't be drawn on what that evidence consisted of. He told reporters either China couldn't stop the virus from spreading or it didn't try to.
This is something could have been contained at the original location, and I think it could have been contained relatively easily. China is a very sophisticated country, and they could have contained it. They were either unable to or they chose not to, and the world has suffered greatly.
Whilst laying to rest one of the more extreme conspiracy theories surrounding the virus, that it was man-made and unleashed as a biological weapon, the US intelligence community didn't contradict the president's theory, saying, "We will continue to examine information and intelligence to determine if the outbreak began through contact with infected animals or if it was the result of an accident at a laboratory in Wuhan." This country has already seen more cases of the coronavirus than anywhere else in the world, over 1 million and more than 60,000 deaths. The virus has also devastated what was once a booming economy, leading to long lines in cities such as Houston as people queue for free food. Although he's avoided direct criticism of China's President Xi, with whom he's maintained cordial relations, President Trump has talked of making China pay for the harm the virus has caused to the American economy, and by extension, to his chances of re-election. Relations between the world's two largest economies could get very frosty indeed. David Willis, BBC News.
US President Donald Trump says he's seen evidence that links the coronavirus to a lab in the Chinese city of Wuhan. Hello again. We begin in the US, where President Donald Trump has launched another blistering attack on China. this time blaming the country for the coronavirus pandemic and even considering tariffs in retaliation. The president claims the following, that he's seen evidence linking the coronavirus to a lab in the central Chinese city of Wuhan, and that an investigation into its origin is underway.
I think we'll be able to get a very good, very powerful definition of exactly what happened. We're working on it strongly now, and I think it's going to be very powerful. But they could have stopped it. They are a very brilliant nation, scientifically and otherwise. It got loose, let's say, and they could have capped it. They could have stopped it. But they didn't. But they stopped planes from going to China, but they didn't stop them from going to the rest of the world.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration has announced Operation Warp Speed, which is aimed at fast-tracking a vaccine. The program is intended to make sure enough doses of a vaccine exist for most Americans by the end of the year. And that's after the country's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, said a vaccine could be ready as early as January. Lionel Donovan is in Silver Spring, Maryland, and he says the Trump administration is looking for answers amid growing criticism over its handling of the coronavirus outbreak.
Trump seems to be insisting on laying all of the responsibility for the spread of the virus at the feet of China. Now, when asked by reporters how laying this responsibility to China would look and how the U.S. plans on punishing China for the virus's spread, whether that comes in the form of tariffs or new trade policies, or is simply having the U.S. not pay the debts to China, that is something that Trump did not get into. Since the virus made its way to the U.S., one of the main things that many people have been trying to get done is putting together a vaccine. Although there was some good news earlier this week about a drug that could help lessen the effects of the virus on people, that's still not a vaccine. And although it takes about 12 to 18 months for a vaccine to be put together, according to Operation Warp Speed, it is the hope of the Trump administration to get a vaccine to most Americans by the end of this year. Many of the billions that this operation would cost would not be paid by the drug companies or pharmaceutical companies, but this will be pushed towards the taxpayers. However, Trump is saying that he wants to get the country back to normal as soon as possible, and it looks like he will stop at nothing in order to make that happen.
The essence of a rising power, that it steps on the feet of the established power by the virtue of its increased scope. But we are now in a really historically different position, which is that weapons technology has developed in such a manner, not only with the destructiveness of weapons, but with the artificial intelligence that is evolving among, say, inanimate objects, that to unleash the full capabilities of either side on the other would have an impact, in my opinion, equal or greater than what destroyed Europe 100 years ago. So I believe it will be a task of any president to see whether he can find an honorable way of avoiding a major war with China, but at the same time to prevent China to use that restraint from expanding its influence in a threatening manner. That's a huge task.
Information threatens to overwhelm wisdom.